But as we've discussed so often now over the last day and a half, you really need to understand the local market. Whether you're a global brand or not, you still need to know the lay of the land in order to do as the Romans do, so to speak. And to help talk us through this, we have two guests. In a few minutes, the country manager of Facebook, Anand Tilak, will join us. But first, let's hear from the chief executive of Mediacom Indonesia. Let's welcome Miss Anita Mookerjee.
Thank you. Okay, so Anand and I will talk to you about why and what in Indonesia matters. But before you get into that, some fun trivia to wake us all from our slumber after the amazing food you all just had. I was just too nervous to eat anything. Did you know that Indonesia is the largest exporter of frog legs to France? I bet none of you knew that. So about 3,000 tons of frog legs get exported to France by Indonesia every year. Singapore Jakarta is probably the only short-haul flight that Singapore Airlines offers a first-class service in. I mean, people can afford it there. Indonesia is the largest importer of Chinese smartphones, not just the low-priced one, if I may add. The serious shit gets imported from China to Indonesia every year. We all know that Indonesia, especially Jakarta, has about 170 plus malls. More than 50% of them sell premium and luxury cars for you to drive in a cab and drive off in a Lamborghini. I mean, seriously. Now, why Indonesia matters? It's the fourth largest populated country in the world with about 17,000 plus islands, over 50,000 kilometers of coastline, 3 different time zones, 1 hour difference between each of them. It's about 250 million plus people, young, optimistic people. Now, if 3.5% of the total world's population does not really impress you, let me tell you that that population is more than the population of all these countries combined. You will see Australia, Canada, all of them there. Indonesia is a dynamic nation marked by great opportunity, and the 2 biggest contributing factors for these are, 1, changing lifestyles. 55% of the population is urban, slated to be about 70% by 2020. Jakarta is predicted to be the world's largest megacity by 2030. Now, this 55% is probably, everybody feels is easy to target because it's mostly in the Java island. But the rest 45% is extremely scattered. Scattered in cities like Medan, Bandung, Surabaya, which cannot be ignored because that's where the consumer spending is actually increasing more than the growth rate of the country, which is at about 8%. Youngest population in the world. Almost half the population is less than 30 years old. I mean, I'm definitely not one of them. And more than 30% of them are less than 15 years old. Now, obviously, these are young people. They're optimistic about the future. They express their opinions. They are extremely, extremely connected and like a global overview on everything that you do. They're concerned about the environment, and most of all, they're technologically very, very savvy. And it doesn't come as a surprise that they are early adopters of technology. They're self-indulgent and understand premium. The optimism in the country is growing, and as you can see from the chart behind me, or on the side of me, Indonesia tops the charts in terms of when people were asked this question on how financially secure do you think your future is? More than 90% of them answered somewhat secure and secure. Now, that tops the charts across all the other markets. It's the 16th largest economy, slated to be the 11th largest in the next 2 years. 33% of the ASEAN GDP, slated to be 40% by 2030. The GDP has crossed the $3,000 mark, and the middle class is growing at an alarming rate. 5 million people get added to the urban consuming class every year in Indonesia. That's like a whole new Singapore every year. The consumer spending is much higher vis-a-vis export-driven markets like China, Thailand, and Malaysia. It's kind of increasing at a percentage of 8% year on year. And Indonesia consumer spending class represents a $1 trillion opportunity by 2030. That's massive. And if anybody is going to ignore that, sorry, not happening. Brands like LV, Hermes, BMW have already predicted that Indonesia is going to be their largest market in Southeast Asia in the next 1 year. Now, this is a point that I think most premium advertisers and anybody who works on premium categories need to take note of, that 10% of the rich own about 80% of the wealth in the country. The second reason for the rapid growth of Indonesia is the rapid digitization of the country. While penetration of the internet is highest amongst the 15 to 24 years old, it is increasingly expanding with the older group, who are the ones who have the propensity to spend or the propensity to consume. Now, for most brands who are coming into digital for the first time, and that happens very often with advertisers in Indonesia, the idea of online is about getting maximum fans on Facebook or increasing the number of views on YouTube. Now, for the young consumer, though, this does not mean a thing. 1 million views on YouTube does not mean anything to them. 100,000 fans on Facebook does not mean anything to them. What they are more concerned about is the WhatsApp groups that they kind of manage for work and fun. I mean, I don't know if it happens in many countries, but in Indonesia, you get client briefs on WhatsApp. And that's not nice. They're more bothered about the fun and flirty messages that they see on Snapchat, the daily promos from Line, what their favorite fashion blogger is up to on Instagram, or even their next Tinder date. The question is, how do brands really keep up with this rapid digitization and this proliferation of data that's happening in the country? It is the fastest growing e-commerce market in the world. It's at about $4 billion currently, slated to go to $25 billion in the next 2 years. That's 400% in 2 years. Local companies like Zalora and Lazada are the ones who are propelling the e-com market forward. And the way they're doing it is they're localizing their offer to meet the cultural nuances of the market. For example, trust is a huge barrier in Indonesia in the e-com circle, like in most developing countries. And what the local brands have done, they have introduced 7-day money-back guarantees. They have introduced cash-on-delivery models, et cetera, to break this barrier. So this barrier is getting broken. Even retail giants like the Matahari, I don't know, people who have visited Jakarta will see Matahari chain of, it's a retail giant. Even retail giants like them are now adopting e-commerce in a way where they are trying to connect and sell to consumers online without any physical interaction. And that's what's propelling the e-com market forward. Mobile. I think this has been spoken to death when it comes to Indonesia. Yes, 50 million more subscribers than the actual population of the country. It doesn't come as a surprise to me. I'm Indian, but that's what it is. It is more than the population base, and the internet usage on the mobile is massive. About 90% of mobile users in Indonesia access the internet and social networking sites through their phone. This mobile has become their identity. It's become a part of their lives. It is something which they just cannot do without. Indonesians today are inherently governed by this phobia called FOMO, which is fear of missing out. And they believe that if we do not have a device with us, on us, we are going to miss out and not be connected. People are also getting smarter. The time spent on devices is the highest in Indonesia, as you can see. And within Indonesia, the time spent on smartphones is the highest. It's a multi-screen market. Multi-screening is a way of life, and Anand will talk to you more about what kind of multi-screening habits exist in the market. But people are spending a lot more of time on smartphones than any other device. And this is shocking. An average Indonesian spends almost 9 hours a day on any electronic media, most of it being smartphones. Now, a point for advertisers and marketers and media agencies to note here. having a company website or having a microsite is just not enough. Today, we see a lot of advertisers in the market struggle with a mobile-free or mobile-friendly site. I think every advertiser today needs to have a mobile-friendly site. It is not a luxury in Indonesia anymore. It has become a necessity. Well, Indonesia in that sense is a true democracy. Freedom of speech and expression has never been so evident as it is now. It is the globally ranked number 2 market in terms of Twitter population, 29 million plus users. Jakarta is the tweeting capital of the world. On an average, more than 3 hours is spent a day on social media. On over 5 million blogs, Indonesians talk about everything from culture to fashion to food to sex to politics, everything. You name it, everything gets discussed on these 5 million blogs. Globally, Indonesia is number 4 in terms of Facebook users. It's the number 1 path country in the world. And email is clearly out. 70% of the Indonesian internet users send emails or private messages through their social messengers, as opposed to 50% or less than 50% who do it over email, over professional or personal email that they might have. I mean, that explains the client briefs on WhatsApp. Yeah. Okay, so having said that, what does one need to take into note if one wants to win in Indonesia? Of course, you need to have the basics right. You need to have the right product. You need to know and identify the right go-to markets. You need to have the right distribution, all of that. That's fine. But in spite of all this, we've seen a lot of brands have failed or struggled, literally struggled to get into the market and get into the hearts of the consumer. We believe that to win in Indonesia, apart from having the 4 Ps right, or the 7 Ps as we call it, correct, one needs to also leverage the 4 Cs of communication. The first one is leveraging the consumer communication ecosystem to its fullest. Now, what do we mean by this? The landscape is changing, and it's changing rapidly. Indonesia is a winner-takes-it-all market. However, one size does not fit all. You have shoppers who are loyalist shoppers. You have shoppers who are repertoire shoppers. You have shoppers who are trialists. And to be able to actually win in the market, you need to be able to target each and every shopper that you want to target through every channel or every channel of the communication ecosystem. By that, we mean that when you have your paid media or your paid assets, and you have the brand's own media and own assets, you need to be able to leverage them in such a way that it leads to more of earned media and earned assets and shared media and shared assets. The second thing is content. I like the bit about she wears the pants. Content is the fuel for high-performing communication systems. We all know that. But if the right content is not distributed in the right way, then you're wasting your time, your energy, and most of all, you're wasting your money. Now, content needs to be distributed in such a manner, even if it's a commercial video or a social piece or even a print ad, content needs to be distributed in such a manner that that content gets you more content. Content begets content, right? Now, for example, if you're trying to figure out what kind of TVC do I place online, or what should be the length of the TVC that I place online, you have to take a step back and realize that we are not here to just distribute branded content. We are here to distribute branded content that works with the content that is being released and consumed by consumers on an everyday basis. Now, if I ask you a question, how can you ensure that the content that you release matches the interest on somebody's BuzzFeed list, for example? The audience has too many choices online, too many to be very honest, too many for comfort. But how do you sit there and distribute content that grabs their attention? So that's the second bit. The third bit is consistency. Consistency is boring, consistency is easy, consistency is something which can be easily overlooked. Wrong, wrong, wrong in this market, absolutely wrong. In a market where 30% or more than 30% of our audience is youth, for the most time they are indifferent. They don't know who you are, they don't know what you're talking about, they probably never even heard of you. And in this situation, consistency, believe me, is your best ally. Having a consistent messaging, look, tone, manner, and behavior for a brand is what is probably going to get you closer to consumer loyalty than anything else is. The RJ Group, or the biggest brand, Big Cola, is a great example of consistency. They were fighting giants like the Coca-Cola and PepsiCo. And what they did was brilliant. They were very consistent in their messaging, and they were very consistent in the way they spoke to their consumers. And the last one is being contextually relevant. There is no point in having the right content in the right channel if you're not going to be able to relate to the cultural or the contextual nuances of the market. The nation is the largest Islamic community in the world. And that's what's really different about them. It is their faith governs their lives, their faith, they are governed by the pillars of their faith, and it's extremely integral to their everyday life. And if you do not realize that, you're not going to get too far in Indonesia. Of course, local players are preferred in the market like any other market, but multinational brands that have really, really made a mark in the market are those who have kind of adapted themselves to the cultural nuances of the country. Let me tell you one thing. Being local is not so important in Indonesia as being perceived to be local. It's the perception of being local that matters in the market. Danone, for example, launched Bisquat, a leading biscuit in the category, which was then taken over by Kraft and now Mondelez. Brilliant example of how they managed to be contextually and culturally relevant to the country. And this only helps build consumer loyalty. Finally, I'd like to demonstrate a video of an activation campaign that was done by Coca-Cola. It was hugely successful because it leveraged the entire ecosystem of Coca-Cola's communication across paid, earned, and shared media. It got the right content to the right audience in a culturally relevant context. Take a look. Sorry.
The month of Ramadan is time of fasting, celebration, gift-giving and goodwill. We took the spirit of Ramadan and put it into every bottle of Coca-Cola in Indonesia, allowing consumers to write personalised, handwritten messages of thanks and good wishes, making the brand a part of celebrations across the country. We started by delivering 170,000 bottles to Indonesian mothers. We set up 3,000 pop-up shops to reach commuters on the way home. We created an online goodness machine, allowing them to send virtual cans to raise money for underprivileged children to go to school. Sales popped and fizzed by 50%. We sold 2.5 million additional cases. Market share grew by 9%. Our goodness machine raised enough funds to send 20 children to school with a full 3-year scholarship.
And with that, I'd like to pass on to Anand, who will take you through and shed more light on the rapid digitalization in the country. I'd like to leave you guys with one thought. Of course, concentrate on China and India. They are the biggest markets in the region. But ignoring Indonesia is going to be a dangerous peril. Thank you. Anand.
Thanks, Anita. Hi, everyone. My name is Anand, and I work for Facebook in Indonesia. I've worked in the region and in Indonesia for the last 12 years. But I've witnessed more changes in the last 2 years as compared to the 10 years before that. So I want to share 3 things with you today. I want to talk about how mobile has changed the way people access internet. Secondly, I would like to talk about how multi-screen behavior, because of mobile usage, has changed the media habits of people. And the last one, I would like to talk about how younger people in the country are very different from their counterparts all over the world. So obviously, the thing that has changed the most in the last 2 years is mobile, and it has changed Indonesia. So that's the growth engine for internet usage in Indonesia. 90% people use a mobile device to access internet. 25% people use only a mobile device to access the internet. They don't use any other device. That means these people have kind of skipped a device. These are probably people who've never used a desktop or a laptop in their lives. And that's fueling the internet growth. So obviously, when such a large number of population starts accessing internet through mobile, the dependency on mobile to access internet is very, very high. Indonesia is a market where it has set a new trend where higher number of people are reliant on a mobile device to access internet. It is significantly higher as compared to any other emerging Asian markets, or for that matter, even globally. People are addicted to internet. You wake up with a mobile phone, and you sleep with a mobile phone. So your mobile phone is with you all the time. Data in advanced markets globally shows that people look at mobile phone about 200 times in a day. That's far more than the number of times you look at your spouse, your kids, boyfriend, or girlfriend. So people are engaged more with mobile phone rather than engaging with people. There is a perception that Asia, and Indonesia particularly, is behind the curve in terms of internet usage. But data suggests that people in Indonesia are setting the trend in terms of time that is spent on smartphone versus any other device. Time spent by people is inversely proportionate to the size of the screen. The smallest screen in your life, mobile, gets about 3 hours of your attention if you're in Indonesia. Television, which is a significantly larger part of the screen, gets about 2 hours. Now, this is where there's a difference and a disconnect. If you look at the brand owners and agencies who are investing their marketing dollars, their budgets are proportionate to the size of the screen. Larger the screen, more the budget. So there's a slight disconnect here that investment in marketing is not happening where people are spending time. And this is not new to us. We have seen the same thing in Facebook across the globe. So if you compare the data or the tendency of people to use Facebook on desktop versus mobile, the time that people spend on Facebook hasn't increased significantly for desktop. But if you compare the time that people are spending through a mobile device, it has more than doubled in the last 2 years. So mobile, again, is changing everything. While smartphone penetration is increasing very fast, what you need to keep in mind is about 70% of the users still use a feature phone. I don't know how many of you are brave enough to try and use internet on a feature phone. Try it. You will give up in the first 3 minutes. So when you develop content which will be seen on a feature phone, please have empathy for the users, because users will find it extremely difficult to surf your content on a feature phone. Mobile is so close to people that it is like the newspaper. They publish the newspaper every day. So you want to share your feelings, you want to express your opinion, and people are very fast and keen to any development in their life. Last year, within 4 days of Valentine's Day, 640,000 people changed their relationship status on Facebook. Now, these are the number of people who only showed it on Facebook. Right? There are a lot of people who may not have. Unfortunately, it's not always in the positive direction. So there are brands who are finding interesting ways to connect with consumers. Dentsu Indonesia did a great job in planning a campaign for Durex. They wanted to target two people, the two categories. First of all, in terms of device, they said we want to develop a campaign only for feature phones and low-end smartphones. So in terms of device, that was the targeting. In terms of targeting people, they only wanted to target people who are either married, engaged, or in a relationship. So we delivered the campaign, and campaign results by Nielsen suggested that there was a 25-point increase in ad recall, 4-point increase in purchase intent, and 3-point increase in brand recommendation. So if your campaigns are targeted on a right device to right people, it delivers great results. I'm going to skip through very fast because we have very little time. Multi-screen, obviously you know that. The time spent on smartphone is so high that it gets used all the time. So when you use two screens at the same time, it leads to an interesting concept of meshing. Meshing is how much time do you spend on surfing the content relevant to what is being shown on television. 60% of the time, actually people are looking at content which is not linked to what you're watching on the television. Football is very big in Indonesia, and it's country number 4 in terms of the total conversations, and number 3 in terms of interactions. We also knew that there are 3 fixed time slots during any football match: 5 minutes before the match starts, during halftime, and after the final whistle. So Mindshare Indonesia, and also, sorry, one more insight. We saw that 83% of those interactions came from mobile device. So we found that we've developed a campaign for Mindshare Indonesia where they targeted ads during those precise 5 minutes when the interactions were very high, and they found that the campaign results was about 3 to 5 times higher. Going to the last one, I'm going to take just 2 minutes, if you allow me, for Youth Nation. So when we started talking to youth, there was a study conducted in 11 markets, including Indonesia, about youth. It suggested that younger people have a lot of fear of being offline. People feel extremely uncomfortable if they're offline. 73% of the younger people said they feel extremely uncomfortable to be offline. They would rather give up their TV for a mobile phone. Dual screen usage is 41% among all people in Indonesia. Among younger people, it's 81%. People are connected all the time, and during elections, we found that there were 200 million interactions on Facebook in Indonesia. 2/3 of those actually came from people who were younger than 34 years old. So this is a young country, and what we found 4 peculiar things about Indonesian youth. First of all, we found that they're very optimistic, they're forward-looking, they're hardworking, and they're connected. In terms of optimism is the confidence of changing the world. 86% younger people in Indonesia, they think that they can change the world. The global average is 55%. Or planning for future, or working hard, or being connected. In every aspect, Indonesian youth is different from what their counterparts are all over the world. So it's a very young country, very optimistic country, and what we have realized is there is a big opportunity for all of us to work together and change the landscape. We think the journey has just started, and as we said in Facebook, our journey is just 1% complete. So we look forward to working with all of you to change the marketing landscape. Thank you.
It says here that we don't have time for questions, but never mind. Do we have any? Anita and Amit, don't go away. Do we have any questions on Indonesia? Who here knew the frog's legs statistics? Come back up on stage. We can't see you down there. Sorry, just 2 minutes. Because, I mean, some of the points that you made are obviously critically important for us who perhaps are even living in Singapore but driving campaigns for Indonesia. Can you help us understand a little bit more, Amit, about, you know, when you say you wanted to target feature phones with that, was it Durex campaign? You know, I mean, that doesn't sound like you've got a lot of room for creative. It doesn't sound like you've got a lot of space to then actually really use the medium.
Yeah.
So can you maybe, as we collect 1 or 2 questions from the floor, can you just elaborate on the nuts and bolts of how to make that work?
Yeah. So even when you're connecting with feature phone users, you should try and find out whether can you also connect with them using a bandwidth.
Yeah.
Because if I'm a feature phone user using my Wi-Fi connection at home or office, then it's much better for me to access things. But if I'm on a 2G with feature phone, you shouldn't try too many things, just a text link. Or you may just work on audio ads.
That doesn't sound terribly creative, though.
It is not, but I guess there are restrictions on the medium right now.
How do you work with clients?
So, for example, we did something for Procter & Gamble. They were trying to target the tier 2 consumers in Indonesia. And we've realized that while Facebook is a nationwide phenomenon, everybody is on Facebook in Indonesia, there are a lot of them who are using Facebook through their feature phones, and they are the ones who are the tier 2 people. And you have to profile those people first. So like Anand said, demographic profiling along with behavioral targeting is what you need to do. B, you need to give them content which is not very graphic-led, which is not extremely heavy for them to surf. C, you need to give them content which is more like promo-led or trial-led, so that they see it quickly and they come and try the product, and that's how it worked.
So it sounds almost easier than what we're used to nowadays. Because you don't have to work with the graphics. You don't have to be too terribly sophisticated about it.
Or even like Valerie mentioned this morning, click to miss call can be a great opportunity.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Hopefully you've had that conversation.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Question
Greg.
in the front.
Yes, Greg.
Fantastic presentation, by the way, Anita. It really was
you.
fantastic. Actually, the statistic that actually scared me the most was the one relating to stacking and meshing, which I thought was really interesting. And one of the, I guess, the corollaries to that would be that some TV GRPs are worth more than other GRPs. Yeah. Do you believe that's the case, and how do we know which is which?
Yes, that is true. There are some TV GRPs which are more expensive than other TV GRPs. That's the rule of every land. I mean, it's not just in Indonesia, it's in every other market, right? TV GRPs and CPRPs are actually related to the kind of content that people want to watch. For example, football, that Anand said, is the most expensive, though it might not be the most amount of GRPs that gives you, depending on the timing that the football matches are.
My question is more, do we have a way of determining which of the GRPs are more prone to meshing versus stacking?
I don't think there is.
I don't think there's a measurement
anything
for
on
that.
that.
Yet, no.
Be an interesting thing to know, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions?
Is Naru here? Naru, we need to work on this concept.
All right, in the absence of other questions, thanks again
Thank
to
you so
Anita
much.
and Amit for their presentation. Anand, I beg your pardon. Anand Tilak from Facebook.